How can this guy be the greatest chef in Paris? He's got a little secret under his hat.
I have a tiny chef who tells me what to do.
Tiny chef.
Hey.
Disney Pixar's Ratatouille, a recipe for fun and adventure on DVD and high-def Blu-ray November 6th.
Hello and welcome to episode 46 of We'll Review It Ourselves, the podcast where we review the movies on our shelves. Every 2 weeks we'll take a randomly selected movie from our collection and we'll review it ourselves. I'm Brian Morgan, and from the wet left coast is...
Dan Bergman.
Sorry about that. It is raining in Los Angeles, or in the greater Los Angeles area.
As we would call it, a torrential downpour. Crisis level water levels, I guess you can call it. It's nasty.
Yeah, which is nuts because I remember when I lived out that neck of the woods, it doesn't rain that often, so when it does, it tends to be magnified by the fact that you got all that loose dirt and earth and dried out crap and all the scrub and stuff.
Yeah, and the fact that we're just not used to it, so yeah, we overreact a lot. I'm sure there's people along the Mississippi who get flooded out on a yearly basis going, wow, that must be terrible. It's like, yeah, you got a point, but still,
Yeah, the oil gets lifted up from the freeways, too, so it acts more like ice, which is why everyone seems to think people in LA can't drive in rain. It's not necessarily that. Yes, I get it, they're not used to it, but the roads are slicker because, again, the oil gets lifted up, so...
Yeah, well, that's the thing, too. I mean, if they were better drivers, we'd understand that. We'd be aware of that. But, people think they can drive just as fast in the rain as they can any other time, and hence we get accidents.
Well, I think that's like NASCAR, where people are driving, 70, 80 miles an hour bumper to bumper as opposed to 200 in NASCAR. But still, they're like, oh, and you wonder why there are accidents. But, okay, so this is our Ratatouille episode. We didn't get any specific feedback on our Facebook page or on the Twitter, although I would like to thank William Sturdivant for retweeting us on Twitter. And we would also like to, let's say, implore, but we'd also like to ask any of our followers that are following us on Twitter to retweet us as well. So if you see that podcast episode get released, retweet it, and you can share us with your friends.
Share us, collect us, trade us.
Yes, there's only two of us, although we do have different issues of cards, so... This is also our post-impeachment proceedings episode, which was kind of fun. We did have an impeachment in our 45 episode, so not to belabor that point, but this is whoever will be president after 45.
Nice. A rat. Awesome.
Yay! I'm going to leave that alone.
What to say is like they're smarter, they're more insightful, and in many cases, somewhat cleaner.
Well, this one in particular, but we'll get to that. So now that we've addressed the fact that we're going to be talking about a rat, and we've already said we're going to be talking about Ratatouille, Dan, how did this movie get on your shelf?
Well, I mean, I could just give you the short answer saying it's a Disney Pixar film, duh. But, even, I guess, yeah, I gotta say more than that to just kind of liven up this conversation or anything. I mean, this is my favorite of the Pixar films.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. WALL-E's a very close second, but I gotta say that this one's like my favorite because, I feel like a connection with rats. I was born on the Chinese Year of the Rat. So, I don't want to say like a kinship. I don't mean I'm not like a subscriber to those beliefs and everything like that, but it's neat to hear how they describe the personality traits of a rat and say, yeah, that's pretty close to me. I can relate to that, so it's fun. And so yeah, I mean it's just that.
I don't think I've heard you at a loss for words like that before, but okay. I gotta say my reasoning is fairly similar. This is not my favorite of the Pixar movies, but it is Pixar, and this movie, I think, really cemented Pixar's reputation for taking strange concepts and making really good animated movies out of them. Because when I first saw the trailers for this, I thought, what is that all about? God, I'm not sure I'm going to like that. Well, it's Pixar. I'll give it a chance. And
yeah, I'm kind of like that with every Pixar film that comes out. It's like, what could they possibly tell a story like this? How? You know, it's like, what could it possibly be about?
Yeah, and this one is no different. I did the same thing going, well, all right. So I went and saw it. I think we went and saw it with the kids, and then when it came out on DVD, we picked it up. I do not have the Blu-ray, and I'm not going to make the switch. I may have said this before on the podcast, but I like Blu-ray for some things. I like DVD for some things, or rather, I'll deal with DVD for some things. And if I have it on DVD, unless it's something that I absolutely think needs to be upgraded to Blu-ray because of high definition or whatever, then I'll do it. But for the most part, perfectly happy having either one.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, but not entirely. I mean, in some effects, I'm kind of opposite, especially when it comes to the Disney Pixar films. I gotta have Blu-ray on that because just the details and the animation, the computer-generated animation, and it's like they put a lot of work into rendering these characters. I mean, I know for Monsters, Inc., I know it's like they rendered each individual hair on Sully's body, you know, and I feel that to really appreciate that, you need high definition now. Am I going to change over to 4K when that comes around? I don't know. I'm iffy on that. They're pretty spendy.
That's quite the investment, too, based on the size of your movie collection.
Yeah, so, I mean, right now I'm happy with Blu-ray. It does give me a fine appreciation for that level of detail. I also like, you know, all the special features and the special editions that just come out on Blu-ray that you don't normally find on the standard DVD. So,
interestingly enough, I was wandering through a department store the other day, and I stopped at the electronics section because the electronics section, I mean, I don't think it goes without saying, but I mean, it's the electronics section. So I was marveling at the clarity of the 4K televisions or UHD or whatever it is we're calling it. I just don't know that I want to spend that kind of money just yet, so I'm holding off until they drop in price before I make the television upgrade, and then we'll see where it goes from there, because unless you have the 4K player, I don't think that television transmits in 4K, so I wouldn't really be seeing a significant improvement. I would have to have something that's specifically geared towards that. And as we've discussed before, sometimes some movies, when you go to ridiculously high definition, they actually lose some of their quality because they weren't made for that format.
yeah, and that's why like DVD still lives quite prominently in my collection. Just simply because like a lot of movies I have were made like in the 70s and the 80s, and they weren't shot in high definition and therefore do not require a high definition rendition for home viewing. You know, I mean, it's just, to me, I always like the hybrid of it though. It's like, was it Blade Runner? Was a great hybrid. It's on I have it on Blu-ray, but the real like personal noir type scenes, you know, where you get the dialogue and everything, they left that in relatively low definition, and it's like, yeah, great, because you got that gritty, you know, tech noir, you know, down in the bowels of Los Angeles feeling. But then when they show the scenes where he's flying through the city, that's done in high definition, and it looks gorgeous.
Cool.
Yeah, So when it comes to Ratatouille, it has a few scenes, you know, where he's overlooking the Parisian cityscape, and it looks beautiful. All the little hairs on the rats and everything, it's great, you know. But when the dialogue's going, yeah, you don't really pay it that much attention to the definition. But you know, like I said, there's enough of these scenes where they're showing off the artwork, where high definition really works out. I'm glad I have it.
Okay. Good. Well, like I said, I'm happy with the DVD. I might pick it up on Blu-ray if I see it cheap and, you know, make a comparison. That would be kind of intriguing. But like I said earlier, when I first saw the trailers for this movie, I was wondering what the hell. And the opening scene, when I was rewatching this, because, you know, we've segued into talking about the movie for our listeners. And the opening scene before the credits or whatever, before the establishment of, this is the title of the movie and all that kind of stuff, where he's saying, I can smell better than most rats and all that kind of stuff. For some reason, I started thinking the modern equivalent be a rat foodie. If he had a cell phone, he'd be taking pictures because, that's what you do. And the whole concept of Chef Gusteau's book of Anyone Can Cook made me think of that old television show, if you recall, If Jan Can Cook, So Can You.
I do remember that show. I used to love watching that with my parents. That's the thing. I mean, looking back now, was he being natural, or was he supporting like some really bad stereotypes? It's like I think about that from time to time.
I wonder if he's maybe just dialing it up a little bit for characterization purposes, just to be distinct.
Yeah, that's a distinct possibility, but again, I wonder, looking back, because I mean, it's like back then it wasn't a thing. It's like, yeah, that's funny, that's cool, that's how he is. Now you look back and you're like, I don't know, what were we thinking?
I was thinking it was funny, just like I'm thinking it is now, just in a different way. Again, you would have to understand the context of, or rather, you would have to understand why he was doing it. If that's just the way he is, then that's just the way he is. And
great.
Yeah. If he was doing it for comedic effect, then it's still kind of funny, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. I mean, if you take it out of context, it could be extremely disturbing. If you listen to it with the intent that, yes, I'm trying to be funny, I'm making fun of a thing, I get it, then I can still laugh at it and understand that some people might not find it funny. I mean, it's kind of weird, and I know this is kind of a strange area to go into, and I hadn't really planned on discussing this, but it goes back to something that we've said on the podcast before. You have to know your audience. Some people will find jokes that could be considered offensive to some funny, and sometimes you can hear the same joke, find it funny once and offensive the next time. It goes to your mood, I guess. But I know in another life, I overheard some friends making jokes, and it was a guy of Asian descent talking to a black guy, and they were making some jokes about things that, they were making historical jokes, and it was kind of funny. But now it's like, ooh, like, I guess contextually you can get away with that. I don't know. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to pull out of that, but the idea is that, sometimes we just find stuff funny, and yes, we recognize that it's, that it could be offensive to some people. But that doesn't mean that we can't laugh at our own pain sometimes. If you catch what I'm saying.
Yeah, totally. I think you pretty much summed it up quite nicely. So that being said, I'm going to kind of go back to what you were saying, though, that about our main character here, Remy, being a foodie. And, that's the thing about this movie that I wanted to start talking about, like, right off the bat. Watching this movie makes me hungry. I mean, I'd like to think, like, how Cars was made by people who are automobile enthusiasts, and it really shows. And I think we talked about that in our Cars episode. That I like to think that this movie was made by people who at least have a good appreciation for fine cooking and food and everything. Because just the scenes where they shows like his descriptions of flavor. I mean, I love that little montage he has about the symphony of flavors where he eats a strawberry and you see this swirl of colors, and then he eats a piece of cheese and another different swirl of colors, and it's like, oh, but they combine them. That kind of writing, that's somebody who really understands the appreciation of food and flavor. And this movie kind of reminded me, I don't know if you ever saw that movie, Chef.
I did not. That's Jon Favreau?
Yeah, that's basically the other side of the Marvel cast. You know, it's like, because it pretty much almost had him and Robert Downey Jr. and just like, wow, it's like this is Iron Man, just the other way around. But that movie, you can tell, was made by somebody who appreciates cooking, because there's these scenes where he makes a grilled cheese sandwich, but the camera is just focused on how he cuts the ingredients and how he puts them together and how he cooks them, and then shows how he appreciates eating it. And he did that for himself.
And it's funny because I sort of flip-flop back and forth between not quite Remy's level, but the appreciation of flavor and the craft that goes into making the food, and Remy's dad, whose name I cannot remember.
Django.
Oh, that's right, Django. Okay. And I don't know, food is fuel. I just need to put something down my face hole and into my stomach so that I can survive for another 7 to 10 days as long as I hydrate properly. But of late, actually, and I think I mentioned this to you earlier, and I'm not advertising the app, but one of the guys I worked with sent me a link for an app on the phone, and you can go to websites that host recipes and import the recipe into the app and then create a shopping list from that, and you can upscale it and downscale it based on how many portions you want and that sort of thing. And he sent me a couple of recipes that were for knockoff Olive Garden soups. And I like cooking. I do it because Christy usually works at night, and I'll make something so that we have, food when she gets home. We have dinner. I mean, sometimes we just eat leftovers because I cook enough to have leftovers the next day. Sometimes we do something simple like, hot dogs and macaroni and cheese. It's not, fine cuisine, but of late I've made a couple of different soups and really appreciated putting it all together and the time it takes to prepare the ingredients. And I've occasionally found myself going, oh crap, it's ready too soon. I'm not ready. I haven't finished chopping the spinach or whatever. So I found this amusing, the timing of watching this movie, because I have been cooking more in the last few years and kind of got a little out of it for a few weeks or so. And then in the last couple of weeks, I've really picked my cooking back up. And to watch this, I'm like, oh, the flavors. Yeah. And the most recent recipe that he sent me was for a chicken gnocchi soup that was just phenomenal. And it was surprisingly good. And I deviated from the recipe a little bit because, like Colette said, follow the recipe, don't follow the recipe. Follow the recipe, don't follow the recipe. I'm like, oh, for God's sake, which is it?
Remember, it was up to Gusteau to be creative. You follow the recipe.
Yes. So I follow the recipe and then I deviate a little bit. So I'm not quite creative. I don't make things up on the fly.
Well, I think, it's just kind of that hierarchy that, you find in kitchen and most cooking. I mean, if you really don't know what you're doing, follow the recipe, follow the instructions, which, I see a lot of this in this movie, which is great. It's like, follow the instructions of those who came before you. Yes, you have talent, but you are not trained. That was one of the great points about, where it's like, it's first they showed that Remy had this talent. He made the soup, and he made it great that people liked it. But when it came time for Linguine, his avatar, if you will, to take, says, okay, now you're going to learn under Colette, and you can see that Remy's kind of learning things, but he's a little resistant, thinking that, oh, I know what I'm doing. Well, no, you really don't. There's still techniques, there's still, you're cutting the vegetables, but no, you can't waste time. You got to cut them and everything. This is at your mommy's kitchen. And it was a neat little journey for him, that little humbling of like, okay, you've got talent, but you've got to hone it now. You've got to train. You've got to learn.
And the thing that I noticed about that was not the food taste. Remy's issues were, again, he's a rat and can't hold a knife, were like the food prep stuff, like, more efficient means of chopping the onion or the celery or whatever. And his strength lay in ingredients. And no, we need saffron, we need cumin, we need thyme, whatever. And that was kind of the thing that Remy got out of that. Yes, it was humbling because he, again, didn't know how to prep food as well, but I think that his objections to her ingredient inclusions were a little more, I don't want to say snooty, but he was definitely the superior cook in the sense that his outcomes were much better. He just needed to learn how to move his puppet around more efficiently.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, too. It's like he also had to learn a level of humility because, you got that in the scene where it's like, she knows stuff, too. You need to respect that, which, it's a valuable lesson. It's like you can have talent. You can have the skills. That doesn't mean you can be a jerk about it.
Oh, yeah, and it also means you should appreciate the talents of other people as well.
Mm-hmm.
No rat is perfect.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the things that, I shouldn't say one, but that's among the many things that I really love about this movie. Because, again, it's a journey for this character. It's not just a, point A to point B. It's just, he's torn between two worlds, and the path that he's choosing is set with all kinds of pitfalls and lessons. Yeah, it's the whole package, man. That's why that's why I love this movie so much.
Oh yeah, and it's also a story of changing people's minds, changing people's perceptions on many levels, because the perception that Linguine couldn't cook, which was true, but we'll put that aside for just a minute, was dashed when he made the soup. And then obviously they found out that, Colette did, and the rest of the cooks, because he admitted it, but found out that it was the rat that could cook, and it was like, oh crap, what the hell? This totally blows my worldview. How does a rat cook? One, he's a mutant. I'm just saying that right now. With strange and powerful abilities. And then to have the food critic played or voice acted exquisitely by Peter O'Toole. And I know we usually talk about the voice actors in this, so I'll save that for later. But to have him write that review and say my perceptions were changed and shattered, and I
believe he's rocked to his core.
Exactly. That's powerful, because that goes towards, one, judging people by their appearance, or in this case a rat, but being open and accepting of what people bring to the world. And they crafted this story so well that at the end of it, yes, they summarize it, but they don't smack you in the face with it like some movies or television shows do. Mm. And I think that was exquisite storytelling, because, again, there's a message in this movie, and it's so well imbued within the movie itself, you don't even notice it being delivered to you until the end. You go, oh crap, yeah, that was here, and everything was all about changing your perceptions. Yeah,
that's the thing. Like you said, it wasn't preachy. It definitely made that delivery so much more potent. That whole speech that Ego gives, it still continues to move me. When was this movie made? Back in 2007?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're talking like more, 12 years ago, man, and it still moves me, to tears. It's like I've made the comment that every Pixar movie does that to me, but this one, really, because it's about acceptance and learning and changing your mind. And the thing that's admirable about that is that, even though Remy is clearly among his people, so to say, he is the smartest of the group,
mm-hmm.
Without a doubt. It's established. He reads, he's empathetic, he's creative, whereas, like you said, the other ones are just like, eat, food is fuel. But he appreciates beauty, he appreciates craftsmanship and everything. And that's clearly difficult, almost impossible for him to live, in that environment. And it really, it comes to a head in that scene, when he finds his family again in Paris, and his father shows him that, rat killing store, the horrors of all the bodies hanging by the rat traps and everything. And, it's like, this is what they are. This is the way things are. This is the way it is, deal with it. And it's like, no, I choose not to, and then the question was like, where are you going? It's like, with luck, forward. And that right there, ooh, yeah, that was like, yeah, it's like, with luck, it's all, a lot of it is dependent on luck. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
And to add to that, the perspective shift, even Django, at the end of it, his perception is changed. The old crusty rat is looking at humans in a different light. And I think the other message of this movie is that it takes two determined people on both sides of the conversation to open the door to show others that this group is or can be okay, that not all of the members of each particular group are like the stereotype. And again, goes to that perception shift. But still, if Remy wasn't as intelligent as he was, then he wouldn't have been able to pull Linguine's hair, which again, I mean, it's...
figure that out, to figure the mechanics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And without being able to speak, at no point could Remy actually talk to Linguine. He was just pulling his hair and nodding and shaking his head. But that was it. And pointing at things when they decided they wanted to make the Ratatouille. That was like, what do you want to make? I want to make this, it was, you didn't have to say a word, just like that. Like, okay, are you sure? Yes.
To be able to communicate beyond the ability of words.
Mm-hmm. And that's important too, because that goes to something that I recall from my instructor training days, and I knew beforehand, but it was really brought home when I went through instructor training in the Navy, is most communication takes place non-verbally. So when you look disinterested, it doesn't matter what you say, you look disinterested and people are going, oh, well, they don't care. If you look interested, again, people will be drawn in and they'll want to pay attention, or they will want to tell you more about whatever it is they're talking about. If you are tired, distracted, whatever, I mean, all those things are conveyed non-verbally, and we read and interpret those signals to have a fuller, richer conversation. And Remy and Linguine did it without words. So it really does show that we can move, or rather that we can express ourselves much more fully than just, hey, I like that. Oh, I like that too. That is good.
Yep. And, and it's just the whole, we can bring about, real positive change, and we can elevate those around us. I mean, yeah, for Remy, it was a daunting challenge, but, that's the beautiful thing. He was able to elevate his entire colony to being, not thieves. Hey, we're going to cook, everybody wash up. This is how we do it. Emil kind of faltered a little, tried to lick the plate, but hey, Emil,
well, sometimes you got to revert to type, or at least, recognize that this is out of your norm. So, but I was going to say, even with the rats washing up, when he put them, in ranks in the dishwasher, like, okay, that's just funny.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
And they came out looking like a drowned rat. So there were a lot of visuals that were subtle if you caught them, but they're just funny in the first place. So, again, a great addition to the Pixar stable of movies.
Yeah, it was just great to see that Remy was able to make this journey without leaving anybody behind by elevating his colony, elevating Linguine, elevating even Colette to some point, but also taking in from what they brought to the table. I mean, and of course, Ego took him out of his dark place and, made him the happy guy that he was, and it's just, that's just a beautiful story. It's just.
No, absolutely. And going to the title character, the food, Ratatouille, one, I didn't know what Ratatouille was. I didn't either. Have the culinary wealth of knowledge to know that it's, a traditional peasant food in France. Okay.
Yeah. No clue.
I thought that was going to be the rat's name. I was like, his name is Ratatouille. Oh, he's a rat. See, I get it. Ha 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 ha. Okay. But the scene where he cooks the Ratatouille and he takes creative liberties with it and then serves it to Ego and then Skinner, and they eat it, and Skinner's like, oh my god, this is good. Okay, great, whatever, I don't care about him. But when Ego eats it, he's magically transported back to his childhood, to Mom putting Ratatouille in a bowl and putting it in front of his face, and he eats it, and it takes him back to a happy time in his life. And for some people, certain foods do that. And again, the way they captured that in the movie was magical. it's like the scene that you were talking about where they had little puffs of green and little puffs of pink to sort of visualize the flavors. It's the same thing. Some foods that I have eaten take me back to when I was a kid. When we went to Disney World this summer, or last summer, I suppose, 2018, we were walking around Epcot, and for our listeners, if you're not familiar with Epcot, they have the countries of the world, and you walk through and you can eat some traditional foods from those neck of the woods. And my grandparents, every year at Christmas time, would bake. I know a lot of people do it. It's kind of a stereotype, making the Christmas cookies and all that kind of stuff. They would do that, and there were a couple of cookies that even now I think of the flavors, and they take me back to my childhood, some of the more pleasant parts of my childhood. And one of the other things that they used to make is lefse, which is a Norwegian flatbread that is riced potatoes, flour, milk, and it is cooked properly on a special griddle. And my grandparents had two, I guess they were probably about maybe half-inch wide sticks that were about 2 feet long, and the end that you flip the lefse with is tapered so that you can get under it. And it's very thin, at least the way they made it, rather like a crepe, but it's about 18 inches wide, the griddle is, and the lefse would cover the whole thing. And they had these sticks for decades, and they were seasoned. And you know how some things like a cast iron skillet, you don't wash them, otherwise you corrupt the integrity of the cast iron skillet. Mm-hmm. These sticks were like that. They were well worn, they were smooth from the heat being applied year after year, and they were just put them in, and then my grandfather would roll the sticks between his fingers outwards from the center to unstick the lefse from the griddle so that he could flip it over and finish cooking the other side. And then it's very simple, or at least, again, the way we ate it, we would just fold it in half and put butter on it and just sprinkle sugar on there and just roll it up, and it was a treat for us. But when we were in Disney World, we walked by Norway, and they had a food kiosk that was selling lefse. And I have the recipe for my grandmother's lefse. I'm not brave enough to make it because I don't want to screw it up and poison the thought of, of all those good memories of having lefse at my grandparents' house and in those happy times. One day I'm going to have to get off my dead ass and just try it, because it's a family tradition. Somebody has to pass that on. And my mom, as she admitted a number of times, was a terrible cook. But I had the lefse, and it wasn't quite the same as my grandparents, but I posted a picture on Facebook of me eating lefse, and it did take me back in time in the same way that the Ratatouille did for Ego. So I completely understood that, and I understood it more this time on this viewing after having my lefse experience than I think I had previously, because again, for the most part, I generally tend to think of food as fuel, and yes, I enjoy it, but there's not a lot of recipes that were passed down from generation to generation in my family, and the only other one that I have yet to capture the magic of is my grandmother's cinnamon rolls, because I just can't figure out how to make the guts part the way she did, because they weren't like any other cinnamon rolls that I have ever eaten in the past. They were like the caramelized, gooey, but they would get hard and chewy, and they weren't, or like kind of syrupy, but they would solidify and gel. So the dough is easy. The dough is the dough, and I have the recipe for that, and I've tried. I assure you, I've tried a number of times to get that mix right based on what my mother had written onto the 3x5 card, which again goes to this movie and the Ratatouille that was just on the card that they pulled out of a recipe deck. As much as I like this app, there is something magical about pulling out an old recipe card that was handed down. And I just can't get the cinnamon rolls right. So I kind of stopped trying. Again, I would like to try and figure it out. I haven't been brave enough Do you have any familial recipes that are like that your mother has given you, or even your father, or anyone really?
Well, my dad never cooked. My mom was more about, there was techniques rather than recipes. I mean, she taught me how to make lasagna, which, I made for you guys.
Mm-hmm. It was tasty, by the way. Listeners, if you would like Dan's magic recipe for lasagna,
well, see, that's
we'll
the thing.
include that in the show.
It wasn't much of a recipe. It was just, how well do you assemble it? So remembering those foods or anything, it's like mom did make some pretty good dishes or anything. A lot of her Chinese cooking that she did, because that's part of our heritage there. Some of it takes me back. I don't know if it's as potent as the way you thought about it, but because we had different upbringings.
Well, there are only a few foods that do that for me. And like I said, the lefse and the cinnamon rolls, and there is a raisin date cookie that is kind of complicated to make. And again, I've screwed it up once or twice, so I'm a little jittery about trying again.
Yeah, just keep trying.
It's just like anything else. The more you practice, the better you get.
But, like you, I myself have never even heard of Ratatouille before this movie. Like you, I thought, it's the rat. Ratatouille makes sense or anything. And after seeing this movie, obviously I was very interested in it. I was like, okay, this looks like something I'd really want to eat. And, it just so happens you were talking about trips to Disney theme parks. I saw, when this movie first came out, I saw the book at Disneyland, the cookbook, the Ratatouille cookbook, which had the recipe for Ratatouille in it.
I did not know this thing existed, and I'm not shocked because Disney.
Yeah.
But now I have to go find it.
Yeah, I have to find it too because it's not at Disneyland anymore. Obviously.
Son of a!
Yeah, because
it's on the internet.
Yeah, the next time I went to Disneyland, which a few years in between at the time, I did not see it, and I really regret not getting it because one, it's from the movie that I really like, and it's got a recipe that I really want to try it. Case it out.
Listeners, if you feel the need to buy us this book and send it to us, send us a direct message on any one of the means of communication we'll provide at the end of the episode, and we'll let you know how to get it to us. Or you can just send us a link to it. That'll be fine too.
So talking about Ego, when he first tastes the ratatouille, he's immediately transported back to his childhood. And I kind of want to, this is kind of going to take away from the appreciation of food and everything to talk more about the mechanics of Pixar movies. Do you find that this type of scene, this rush down a tunnel, this memory or this flash of scenes or whatever, do you notice that is a feature in a lot of Pixar movies? I won't go so far as to say all of them, but in a lot of them.
No, I haven't really noticed it, but it's been a long time since I've seen all of the Pixar movies in close proximity to each other, so I acknowledge that you probably know more about them than I do in that respect, so the answer is no. Short answer. Okay,
short answer, no. Because, like I said, the examples that came off the top of my head when I was taking notes for this was, the most similar to this one I found was in Finding Nemo, when Dory sees Nemo and all of a sudden all the memories come flashing back and it's like, oh, you're Nemo! It's like, there was that one in Cars when Lightning is having a hard time in the final race and Doc shows up and, it's like that little montage with thinking back to Radiator Springs, thinking back to Portia, and there's Doc, and this is all kind of just melded together. And then, WALL-E, the hyperspace part, I thought was just mechanic-wise, maybe not in concept, but I just to me that just looks like among the four characteristics that are common in a lot of Pixar movies.
Well, I think, and I could be wrong about this, but it's a great visual to draw you into this is a flashback, and since Pixar movies are generally seen with kids, although I could care less. I'll go see it by myself if I want to. It's a great visual cue for kids, and it's universal. I mean, it spans ages. You're like, okay, we're doing a flashback. The here's like, oh, that was cool. Oh, hey, now we're somewhere else. Okay, got it. It makes for a smoother transition. If you're asking if they overuse it, again, I don't think so because I don't remember it. If that's not what you're asking,
no,
then,
that's not what I'm asking.
Okay.
It's just, I think it's just a neat thing to notice in all the Pixar movies. It's because the thing that is in every Pixar movie is the voice of John Ratzenberger.
Mm-hmm.
He's the waiter in this one.
Yep.
Although I didn't see the Pizza Planet truck.
I didn't even Google it. I didn't want to know. I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, because I remember I thought we when we did the Incredibles episode, I think the Incredibles was probably the only one that didn't have it, and so that means it's got to be somewhere here in Ratatouille. So I just didn't see it. But the other thing is, like, every now and again, you also see like other Pixar characters show up, and this one, the shadow of Doug, the dog from Up, shows up in the beginning sequence when Remy first leaves the sewer after losing his family, and he's climbing up through the apartments, and a dog barks at him. And you see the shadow, and that's the shadow of Doug. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the Pizza Planet truck is in there. I'm afraid I did want to know, so I just Googled it.
I didn't want to know, but I really wanted to know.
Yeah, when they're driving down the street, it shows up in the background. They don't spend a whole lot of time in the streets, so
yeah,
it's a
quick flash.
Yep, but it's in there, so
yeah,
and it drives over a bridge. It's lovely.
Nice.
Lovely.
And of course, the other thing that Pixar movies have in common is the Pixar shorts. They usually play just before the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they've become kind of synonymous with the post-credit scenes of Marvel movies? It's like people go to the Pixar movies just for that as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I would call it that, yeah.
Yeah, the overall experience of going to see a Pixar movie involves seeing that short. But that harkens back to the days of old, like, Bugs Bunny shorts before movies, and the old newsreels back before the movie started. It's just fun. It's a nice throwback touch. I like it.
Yeah, and then the ones that are associated with this particular film, I think are, again, among my favorites. I mean, especially Your Friend the Rat. Because it just kind of goes along with this movie of just trying to say that, hey, man, don't be so hateful against rats, man. Rats are cool. Yeah.
We keep them as pets, so...
Yeah. And then Lifted, I thought it was just a laugh a second type of movie.
There were a lot of good jokes in this movie. I mean, some very subtle ones that I don't think I'd noticed before. Maybe I did, and again, it's been some time since I watched this, but I don't know that I'd ever caught that Linguine's father's name... Not who we find out to be his father, but, the father he was raised with. His name is Alfredo.
That's funny.
And I was like, oh my God, did it just said his name was oh crap, that's, okay. Good job. Way to go. Never noticed that before. So I noticed a few more jokes this time around, which was nice. Yeah,
the one I noticed in this one that I didn't notice before is a little subtle thing when the scene where Linguine is kind of on the edge of confessing that he has a little rat telling him how to cook, and Colette's kind of looking at him funny and everything, and he's like, well, I have a little... And her eyes go down for a split second. It's like, oh my.
Yeah, and then she's reaching for the mace as well, like, oh my God. Yeah, there were some very good, subtle, adult-related jokes that, again, just fly right over kids' heads, which is fine. It's not the first one to ever do that.
Yeah. And then the other one, though, is like, after that scene, when they're in the kitchen and she's working and he turns around, and the camera angle starts kind of low and kind of works its way up before Colette realizes she's being looked at. And it's like,
Yeah, again, I don't recall that I noticed that specifically, but...
Oh, yeah, you watch it again, you won't unsee
it. Great, now you pointed it out. Now I go, okay. Yeah, there's so much that goes on in animated movies, and not camera angles in the physical, it's not like they had an actual camera. But, where they program the camera and all that kind of stuff that go on, sometimes I'm of the mind that these are more difficult to create in that sense because of that. In the sense that, if you have actors on a scene, you can physically put the camera and put it where you want. And then if you don't like the way the actors are, you can move the actors. It's a little more difficult, I think, with computer animation to move the actors. I know you can just cut and paste, and I'm not sure, again, how the mechanics go. I mean, I assume they're using some form of an object-oriented animation language, so each thing is an individual piece that can be dragged and moved around. But because you have so much freedom, it's almost like a candy store. You're like, I don't know what to do. There's so many choices. Is actually more where I was going. So I think it makes it more difficult to select the right camera angle or to, do what you want to do because you have so many choices. And I applaud them for what they did do.
Well, that's what makes these movies so appreciable. Is that a word?
I don't know, but I know what you mean. So, yeah. Able to be appreciated?
Yes.
More able to be appreciated? Yes.
Yeah, something like that. Which also, too, we're talking about, a little subtle humor. The other thing I also like so much, though, is like the when we first see Ego in his office and the camera looking down. You're talking about different camera angles, but looking down. I want a room just like that. I want a room shaped like a coffin.
Yes. Very symbolic.
Oh, yeah. It lends to his characterization.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the other, again, talk about subtle humor. This one isn't so much adult humor, but I mean, it still makes me laugh. Is that scene after they get struck by lightning? Emil is kind of getting up and kind of realizing that he's been struck by lightning, and just the subtlety of the way his eyes widen. And again, just that, like you were saying, the computer generated it. You actually have to tell the computer to do these things, and just how much, and to get it so right to where it's humorous every time.
And it's not like you could shock people or strike them with lightning to see what their physical reaction was. I mean, they kind of had to, oh, I guess that's what it would look like, or at least have fun with it and go, this is what I think it should look like. In this movie, just like many others that Disney has anything to do with, and Pixar by extension does it for, their animation for anything with anthropomorphized animals, they pulled in a bunch of rats and observed their behavior so that they could animate the walking properly, except for, Remy, because he walked upright because I don't want to taste where I've been walking on my food. Which is evolution. Maybe Remy was the next step in rat evolution.
Oh, let's hope so.
Again, he's a mutant, telling you.
Let's hope so. I want to live with rats. Rats are cool.
Lab rats? Aren't we all lab rats? No, I'm kidding. But the mechanics of rats walking, that was all studied. Rats climbing, whiskers, I mean, all of that. And again, the programming involved is just tremendous to view those hairs, like you said, with Monsters, Inc. And again, the whiskers and just the little nimble rat fingers doing nimble rat finger things. I fully appreciate what Pixar brings to the table and the leaps and bounds that they started out ahead, or rather they pushed the industry by.
Yeah, but as much as advanced as they are and as beautiful as their movies are, they still couldn't escape that one cliche.
Oh, cliche time?
Yeah. Every apartment faces the Eiffel in this movie. It's like you're never away from it.
Yeah, but if you look, I mean, they're circular, outward, like there are a lot of apartments that face the Eiffel Tower. So, I mean, I get not every window is going to face it, but if you live in the right places, then... Yeah,
well, so this is where I'm going to armchair quarterback this one.
Okay.
When we first meet Linguine and we first go to his apartment when he takes Remy home with him, it's got a view of the Eiffel. Now, even a dumpy apartment's got to be a premium that has a view of the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, and he's a poor guy. He got a job
from a poor family.
Yeah, he's got a job as a garbage boy. So he's coming from humble means or anything. For him to have an apartment like that, I don't know. It just, to me, again, this in the armchair quarterbacking this, I think it'd have been a little better. Now, granted, I think this movie is near perfect, so this is very minuscule, and this is just my opinion, and this is just me. But it'd been
listeners, please send your hate mail to.
No, but it's like it's just to say, yeah, this is my apartment. And you look at it, looks out into an alley, but then when he inherits the restaurant, everything's better. Then he's got this nice home, and it also looks at the Eiffel Tower, or then it's like he's moved up. That's my one thing.
Well, perhaps he received a mere pittance of an inheritance and was able to secure housing and not continue, which is why he needed the job, to continue to make the rent. Maybe he was about to be evicted.
Possibly.
It's filling in a blank, but, headcanon accepted. Yeah, so the interesting thing, again, going to apartments, and I, in retrospect, can see exactly what you're talking about, where they all faced the Eiffel Tower. But again, it's a Paris landmark. They're just trying to remind you where you are. Maybe I missed something, but was Linguine American? Because he didn't seem to have a French accent, unlike everyone else in this movie.
Well, I don't know about everyone else. I mean, the rats didn't really have a French accent.
True, but they're rats. I mean, you wouldn't expect them to talk anyway, so...
Ego really didn't have a French accent. I mean, Peter O'Toole, it was very English.
That goes back to something that you had said earlier about English accents representing French people, so... That was during our Hugo episode, I believe you had that conversation.
Yeah, and, it's like you hear that in the game Assassin's Creed Unity. It takes place during the French Revolution in France, and everyone has an English accent.
Well, the English were backing the French, so... Or something. I don't know.
Okay, I'll let that one go.
But speaking of Peter O'Toole and what I'd said earlier about the voice acting, maybe they could have made a movie with other voice actors. I don't know. But it seems to me that everyone who was involved in this film was the right person for their character and had the right vocal qualities that I would like to think that's what I'd want to hear from those characters. Again, Patton Oswalt as Remy. Sure, they could have gotten anyone, probably, but Patton Oswalt carried the right tone, the right vocal range. It was very much what you would, I guess, think of a rat sounding like. I mean, if a rat could talk, I think that the voice actors were spot on and their selections were spot on, even if you think that they could have been played by somebody else. Now that I've heard it played by them, I don't want to hear it from anyone else, I guess is really more what I'm trying to say. Kind of like what we've talked about before with Robin Williams doing the genie in Aladdin. I don't want to hear anybody else be the genie. I want to hear Robin Williams. So I think that, everyone was fantastic in this movie. I mean, Brad Garrett was in it. As you said, John Ratzenberger, obviously, he's got his mandatory part. Peter O'Toole, who thinks, hey, we're making an animated movie, let's get Peter O'Toole?
Yeah, that's something that Pixar does frequently. I don't know if they do it all the time, but they tend not to really play up these big-time actors who lend their voice talent to these movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, Brian Dennehy plays Django, his father.
Yeah.
Ian Holm.
Yeah. I'm like, what?
Bilbo Baggins was Skinner,
Yeah.
Janine
Nice.
Garofalo.
And she did a fantastic job. I mean, I couldn't remember who had played who, and I'm like, oh, I know that voice. Why do I know that voice? Because it's the rat, or because it's Colette. I got that. But, when I went to IMDb and looked them up, I'm like, oh, wow, those were such good selections, and I wouldn't really have thought to put them there. How sometimes, you fan cast certain things. Usually it's, fantasy stuff or, superhero stuff and that sort of thing. I didn't think, I'm going to make a movie called Ratatouille about a rat that cooks and fan cast the voice actors. But, these are not the people that I would think of to put in an animated movie. And yet here they are and knocking it out of the park. So, again, kudos to them because it was a great mix. And like you said, Pixar does not make a tremendous deal about who they're going to have in their movie. Wasn't until you saw the movie like, oh, Peter O'Toole. That's Peter O'Toole. And I couldn't imagine anyone other than Owen Wilson as Lightning McQueen. Now that you've heard it, you can't get out of it. Mm-hmm. So, again, good choices.
Yes.
Bravo, Brad Bird, and he actually had the champagne named after him in the movie. Because, again, something that most movies do is little tips of the hat to people that worked on the movie or that sort of thing, and Pixar is no different. There are a number of inside jokes that are infused into the movie that are just part of the scenery, but when the person that they're referring to sees them, they're immortalized in this movie forever. So that's always cool. I think that's a neat touch and pretty cool that Pixar does it. It seems to be a lot more than other movies, and maybe it's just because, again, they have the ability to, just write that in, like, oh, hey, we forgot to put that in. Yeah, just CGI some stuff in there. It'll be fine. So they can go back and put things in there. But one of the other things, and really, I've actually covered pretty much everything that I took in my notes, except, again, just to continually praise this movie, is when Colette was talking about the different cooks in the kitchen and saying that, oh, we have robbers and thieves and pirates or whatever. I mean, we have a whole mishmash of people. And she made the reference to, he was a white guy, really ruddy cheeks. I mean, rosy cheeks, but he had long face, large chin. And he had like 3 different backstories because he would always tell a different story.
Horst.
And one, okay. And one of them was how he had killed a man with just his thumb.
Yes.
And then later on in the movie, there's the part where the Skinner is being thrown out of the restaurant, and you see Horst come after him with push him out with his thumb. Yeah. Like, oh, nice callback. Way to keep that joke playing again. It just added to the mystery.
I do that every now and again, too, for people who would get it or anything. This dumb, It's like, and people who get it, they back off, in a joking manner, don't mind. Not that you actually think I'm going to kill him with a thumb, but no, I do that. Which, it's funny. That was one of the things I was kind of wondering if I should bring up. It's like, nice segue. The environment of a gourmet kitchen in a high-end restaurant like that. It's like, this whole movie I was thinking, it's like, are they all totalitarian like that? Because, I'm a fan of Anthony Bourdain, and he'd always talk about the stress and the hierarchy and the banter, everything that goes on in a kitchen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I gotta say, probably a kitchen is a horrible place to work in, man. But so rewarding too. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it. I don't think
it must be. I mean, you do things that you love and suffer some of the downsides because you love what you're doing, and yeah, it seems pretty cutthroat. Now, if you recall, way back when we both lived in San Diego, and we went to, what was the name of that hotel at the top, or the name of the restaurant at the top of Horton Plaza? Was it a California Pizza Kitchen? I think, maybe.
No, but I know which one you're talking about, and I forget the name of it. But it was an independent.
Okay, but we had a mutual friend that we hung out with at the bar. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan and I used to drink beer when we hung out in San Diego at a bar, and we were regulars at a bar, kind of like Cheers, but not. Anyway, if you recall, there was the young couple, and I cannot for the life of me remember their names.
I forget her name, but his name was Steve, and I always remember that because he was a fan of the Monkees, and his email was Steve Monkey or something like that. So,
okay,
Steve.
But Steve, in fact, is who I was talking about. He was the sous chef at that restaurant. Yes. And that was the reason we went there, because he, made crab cakes or something, and we got like
glorious.
Yeah. So you remember the crab cakes?
Oh yeah. I am not a fan of shellfish. I'll tell you right now, I don't like it. I don't know what it is. It's just flavor and texture, not my thing. But you make them into crab cakes. / when he makes them into crab cakes, so good, so good.
Yeah, and for some reason, that's the only reason I remember what a sous chef is. But it was kind of fun to go through the chef's organizational structure with Remy and Chef Gusteau.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was kind of fun. Yeah. Like, hey, I know what that is. But
it kind of gave you a rundown. You were given a lesson in the structure of a kitchen without feeling like you were being taught something.
Right. Again, it's kind of edutainment without, really focusing on the entertainment or on the education part. But you did learn something as they walked away, because everything they said was true. Mm-hmm. You have the executive chef, and you have the chef, and you have the sous chef, and and who does what. Yep, exactly. And who's responsible for what. And yeah.
Funny side note, when he mentions a saucier, I knew what an saucier was from Apocalypse Now.
Well, that's an interesting place to learn that particular piece of information.
Yeah, it was from the character whose name was Chef. He was the high-strung guy from Louisiana that was on the boat. And the scene where they got off the boat, he went looking for mangoes, and Captain Willard went with him, and he says, what'd you do? It's like, oh, I was in a saucier. He's like, what's in a saucier? It's like, I specialize in sauces. Boom. There. Piece of knowledge I knew right there. And I remember that all the way to this movie. So.
It's amazing where you pick up little bits of trivia and information from movies, books, music, that sort of thing. I mean, and I know I mentioned music because the only reason I know the word moot is because of Jesse's Girl. And it's the only song that I know of that uses the word moot. And it drives me insane when people say mute, but that's, again, neither here nor there. I would never have thought to look up that word at the time that I did, unless I'd heard that song and said, what the hell does moot? Okay, contextually I can figure out what that means, but now I have to go look it up. So now I use moot all the time, and it's exciting.
Nice.
Yep. So random acts of education.
Yes.
In pop culture. I like it.
So, one last thing I just want to say. This one's going to get serious before we close up on this one. We don't, we're males. We're male-centric. I get it. We're not trying to be malicious, but, a lot of times we don't really talk about the women in our films as much. And I just want to just kind of give a shout-out to the really strong female character in this film. I just want to say,
the only female character that I recall.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't see any female rats.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. It is weird.
And the only other one was the old lady that lived in the house. And I just interjection, I did have this one minor thing, and I was going to wrap it up or put it in my wrap up. But her shotgun was magically full of bullets until it was convenient for it to not be full of bullets because she shot like 15 rounds out of that thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry. You were going to discuss Colette because she is in fact the only female character.
The only female character, but I like that she is a strong female character. She really I've worked too long and too hard, and you notice I'm the only woman in here. It's because it's ruled by a bunch of old men. But that didn't make her. What's the word I'm looking for? Like just a cliche damsel in distress. I mean, she was on top of her game, and I appreciate that portrayal.
Yeah, she wasn't just a passive character in the movie. Yes, she ended up being the love interest, but she was driven but not bitter. There's maybe a little bitterness, but she wasn't soured to the experience. She still wanted to move forward in something that she loved, and she was pretty good at it, and again, open-minded enough to take counsel from a rat regarding food selections or food preparation, especially in regards to the title food. But yeah, no, I loved Colette. I mean, I thought she was a fantastic character.
And of course, the other instance that really made me like this movie even more too is when Ego thought, oh yeah, I've never been given my compliments to the chef, and it's just my way to be the chef, and he said, well, I'm not the chef, and Linguine went and he came back with Colette. It wasn't like this, so where's the chef thing? It's like, oh, you must be the chef, just that he didn't even think twice. It's like, yeah, it's totally plausible that the chef this great could be a woman, and there was no hesitation. It's like, oh well, obviously he thought it was Linguine because that was the whole focus of the story. Finding out it wasn't him, there wasn't any hesitation to think, oh, it's her. I love that.
I agree wholeheartedly.
So,
I thought it was well inserted into the movie, and yeah, no, I have nothing else to add to that. That you're right, but yeah. So I mean, again, I didn't take a lot of notes because I was really enjoying the movie, and
I'm also kind of out of time too. So
yeah. So that being said, you said that was the last thing you wanted to add. So where would this go on your shelf?
Oh, this definitely is on the Disney exclusive shelf, along with all the other Pixar movies. Now, it is my favorite and everything, but I just don't feel right separating it from them to put them on the pinnacle shelf. I think so. It does hold a great place in my heart, but it is on the shelf with the rest of the Pixar films because that's where it belongs.
Yeah, I would put this on the I feel so odd saying that I love this movie and then putting it on the bleeding edge of the second shelf. So it's either at the back end of the top shelf or the bleeding edge of the second shelf. Because, again, there's some emotional movies, and I'm sure that if someone did the analysis of where I'm putting movies on my shelf, they'd go, wow, you put a lot of movies on the second shelf. I'm like, yeah, again, my top shelf is for my deep loves. And I love this movie. It's not my deep love. Like Toy Story 3, I'll put that above this one. Toy Story goes above this one. So, that's why this is going to go on the bleeding edge of the second shelf or the back of the first shelf. It's damn close. So,
All right.
yeah. All right. Listeners, if you want to let us know where this goes on your shelf or give us some feedback or discuss something you think we might have missed, let us know on our Facebook page, on the Twitter. You can email us at wrios2016mr@gmail.com, or again, leave us a voicemail at 804-699-1067. To be fair, we did get listener feedback that we didn't talk about because I don't want to keep going over the number of times that we get medical grade brace calls or any other sort of spam phone calls. So, we might throw them in every now and again for entertainment. But, listener feedback, we're looking for it. Again, we would really love to hear from you. So hit us up at our points of contact. And if you think maybe we need to be somewhere else, like on the Instagram thing, I think that's a thing, then let us know that too. We'll definitely consider other various forms of social media. And with that, Dan, should we find out what our next movie is going to be?
Go for it.
Okay. And our next movie is
The Princess Bride.
Oh my dog, The Princess Bride. The time has come.
It's finally happened.
It's The Princess Bride. Yeah. Okay, so The Princess Bride is next.
All right.
Anywho, Dan, your movie-themed goodbye is?
I'll make this easier to remember. Keep your station clear, or I'll kill you.
Yeah, she's uber violent. I do like that. I find that strangely attractive.
Oh,
anyway.
yeah.
All right. Listeners, thanks again, and we'll see you in 2 weeks with The Princess Bride.